We continue our coverage of the NBA draft by looking at what many think is an area of need for the Miami Heat, the center position. And while we scout a couple of players that might be options for the Heat, and we hear from Bruce Pearl of Auburn University, is the draft a solution for Miami? We'll answer that and more on today's draft edition of Locked On Heat.
That's what I'm doing. I'm taking 10 blue notebooks with me to Malibu with my wife. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. 10 blue notebooks to Malibu. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. Blue notebooks. 10 blue notebooks to Malibu.
My life.
Hello, Heat Nation. It's a Friday edition of Locked On Heat, your daily podcast covering all things Miami Heat. However, you may be listening or watching on YouTube, on Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. I am David Ramil, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Wes Goldberg. If you're looking at an area of need for Miami, a strong argument could certainly be made that an upgrade at the center position is among them. Not because there's anything wrong with Bam Adebayo, of course, but many feel that there's a better option to start him at power forward. And then so you have to look at the center position. We'll be looking at Arizona's Christian Koloko, and we'll hear from Bruce Pearl, the head coach over at Auburn University, about big man Kessler Walker. But the news on Wednesday night that has Heat fans shaken is that the Dallas Mavericks had pieced together a deal for Houston's Christian Wood, a name that many fans had seen as a potential option for the Heat, and one that we discussed as a trade option this past season around the trade deadline. While some fans were concerned Miami let another option get away, Wes, I think you and I are on the same page that Wood wasn't really the answer for the Miami Heat.
No, I kind of see where Heat fans are coming from, because all it cost Dallas was their late first-round pick and some salary filler, which doesn't even sound like they're going to make the training camp roster for Houston, right? And so you just think, like, yeah, why couldn't Miami have done that? They have a late first-round pick. Could they have thrown in some salary filler too? But we went over this in the middle of the year when there was rumors about Christian Wood being tied to the Heat before the trade deadline. Christian Wood's all right. He's just, to me, that's not the kind of player you need in the playoffs. Like, there's a reason why the Rockets are so much more comfortable going with Sengun, a rookie, over Christian Wood, and then why they wanted to go in that direction. I just think Wood is one of these players who could put up stats on bad teams, but kind of has a ceiling. You look at all the advanced metrics, like his box score stuff is good. You're like, all right, cool. He can space the floor a little bit, and that's all really interesting. But the advanced metrics, like every team he's been on, is better with him off the court on both ends, offense and defense. So I just don't really see him as the kind of mature adult basketball player that you're going to need in, like, say, an Eastern Conference Finals against the Boston Celtics. Even if you think you need more size against a team like the Celtics or Milwaukee or what have you, I just think that Christian Wood has got like the outline of the guy that you want, but isn't quite there.
Right. I think I saw it phrased on Twitter that the idea of Christian Wood is better than the reality. And I think that's pretty fair. A guy who can stretch the floor, who has the size and rebounding ability and things of that sort. I think a lot of the off the court stuff or the attitude problems, not necessarily overstated, but amplified by the fact, well, he played on a really crappy team that was going through a lot of turmoil, was leaning heavily into the rebuild. That's not what he signed up for. He didn't expect that to be the case.
Yeah, they
in Miami
had Harden, right? That was the whole thing. Was the big man to pair with James Harden? So I get that. I've heard that the off the court stuff is actually pretty bad. Like it's he's a tough guy to play with from what I've heard. So maybe that's also something you don't want to recruit if you're the Heat.
Yes, I could see that. Miami hasn't shied away from quote unquote head cases before. Jimmy Butler being most notable of them. Even Dwayne Dedmon, another center option, another potential problem in the locker room and things that sort. A guy looking for them. Miami seems to find these guys and just get them to buy in to the overall team concept. So I can understand the concern that Wood may have been a better version of what we've seen from him in Miami. The expectation is that he'll find a way to contribute to winning basketball in Dallas. But either way, the option isn't there. If there's a silver lining from all this, it's that Miami has seen the market for a serviceable big man along the lines of Wood for a pretty low price, asking price.
Good point.
Like teams could probably trade, again, what they have in the 27th pick and other assets on the roster or future picks and things of that sort to get somebody they can plug and play now. But we're debating this as we're looking at these two prospects, Arizona's Christian Koloko and Auburn's Walker Kessler, whether or not the draft is a better option for Miami, whether or not it's time to make a trade for another player like Christian Wood, or whether they just pick somebody else in free agency and see if they can get them. And I don't know that we have a set answer. I guess we'll go into our blue notebook exercise a little bit and start
Well,
scouting these players. But I know
no, but
that
I
we
think
want to
it's a
kind of
good.
debate this more.
Yeah, it is a good question though. Like, do they need another traditional type center? I have
Yeah.
historically been on the side of no. Bam
Mhm.
Adebayo is so good at that position, and that's the best spot for him.
Yeah.
But after watching that Boston series and kind of looking at where the Eastern Conference is trending, I think that they could use a plug and play like traditional 7-footer because I think Bam can play next to that player. I
Yep.
think that there's different versions of defense. Like we've seen the Heat play more of a drop style with Omer Yurtseven in there. You and I agree that Yurtseven's probably a couple years away from being that guy. So if you can find another answer, just maybe another option there, just Yurtseven's development might not pan out. You and I are high on him, but it might not. You can't. It's not guaranteed. And so, could you look in another direction in free agency or at the end of the first round here? Because there's other bigs like Jalen Duren and Mark Williams that project as sort of those plug and play type bigs.
Yeah.
They're going to go like in the lottery or in the middle of the first round. They're probably not going to be there at 27 where the Heat are picking. But there's some other guys like Koloko and Kessler who could be available at the pick that you might think are a plug and play option. And I think it would be useful. Like this might not be the starter. I don't know that I'm all the way in on Bam starting next to a traditional 7-footer, but I like the
Yeah.
idea of having that option, just being able to throw a different look at teams like Boston and Milwaukee who thrive on size and physicality. So to have another guy like that is just useful. It's an option that the Heat don't really have right now.
And you kind of have to overhaul everything that Miami does well. I mean, it's not just shifting to a different base defense and everything else, but it's just Miami seems to thrive defensively when they're switching and they're mobile. And we even saw small ball lineups with PJ Tucker at center dominate in the postseason. And I think that could still be the case moving forward. And but to your point, you've got Brook Lopez in Milwaukee, you got Joel Embiid, you got Jarrett Allen, you've got
Yeah.
a host of other bigs throughout the Eastern Conference that could change things in their favor. Robert Williams, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I guess it's still an option, and you kind of want it on the roster. I'm still kind of stuck between whether or not it's the right option as a starter, or it's the right option in period, or if you just want to set the tone by having Bam become the best player that he can be, and that's certainly a possibility too, and just finding the right solution at the 4 to
Yeah.
play alongside him down
And
the road. PJ
Bam
Tucker is
can play the
serviceable now.
4. I mean, he's so
Yes,
switchable and things like that. There's no reason to think that he couldn't, and there's enough touch there that
with the
maybe you
floor
believe that he
spacing.
can play the maybe. I mean, I don't know. At the end of the day, you get your most talented players and you figure it out. But in regards to like getting a guy here, like we've seen the Heat prioritize play. Like they chose Precious Achua in the draft. They didn't know that they were going to
Yeah.
trade him for Kyle Lowry, but they picked Precious Achua in the draft. They went out and got a 7-footer in Dwayne Dedman in the middle of the season because they felt they needed a player like that. So just based on the
Mhm.
actions of Miami, it doesn't necessarily mean that that player is going to play 30 minutes a night, but they want to have that kind of player on the roster. And at the end of the first round, a guy like Christian Koloko could be a good option for them. So if we want to do a quick like scouting breakdown on him for our blue notebook, you're not a fan of Koloko's game. I'm really high on Christian Koloko. So let's start with you though. Like, why are you out on Koloko? Why are you not a big fan of his?
Because as I mentioned to you before we started recording, I just think that the college game is not necessarily watered down, but yes, it is. It's in comparison to the
Yeah.
NBA. The talent disparity is so great that you're going to have these bigs like Kessler, like Koloko, stand out, put up big numbers, and seem appealing on in theory, but in reality, they're not going to be able to translate to the NBA. I just think they're going to be better suited as future role players, and as such, I don't know that you necessarily want to swing on a draft pick. If you're going to take a player and actually keep them on the roster, why you'd have a decent 7-footer when there are so many of those available that aren't necessarily going to raise the ceiling of your team? I'd rather take a swing at a more talented wing player or even a guard ball handler that can raise the ceiling of this team considerably, add that scoring punch that was missing. Like
Yeah.
for all our concerns
Well,
about the
no, so you're
big,
basically saying that Koloko's like you're not believing in his ceiling. Like you think at best he's
no.
just like a replacement level 7-foot body.
Yeah, I mean he's 22, which he's certainly young enough. That's not the concern there. He spent 3 years in Arizona, showed marginal improvement along the way. He's a good leaper. He's a 7-footer with a 7'5" wingspan, so he
Yeah.
covers a lot of ground. I just don't see those multiple efforts from him, and I know that's something that the Heat prioritize in terms of being able to leap off the floor. A guy like EJ Liddell that we talked about in
Yeah.
yesterday's episode, multiple efforts. That seems to be the fit for Miami. Koloko just can't provide that, and I just think as a 7-footer, yeah, he's going to be able to swat a lot of 5'10" point guards away. That's not going to translate into the NBA when you have much more talented players. So I
I
don't
know.
see
I don't
what he
know. Like
does.
that's elite. That's still elite size. We're not talking about a guy who's like 6'10"
Yeah, no, I get
and
it.
all right as a shot blocker. He's 7 feet, like legit 7 feet with a 7'5" wingspan. He had a block rate of above 10%. I mean, he's huge. I mean, there's a difference between just like big and enormous. And Koloko is under the enormous category. And you said marginal improvement. I think he made an enormous improvement from year 2 to 3, like a major leap to the point where he wasn't really considered a first round prospect at all. And now is a lot of people would consider him a first round kind of talent. I like his feet. You know, he didn't start playing basketball seriously until he was 15 years old, growing up in Cameroon, mostly like was playing soccer. And so that footwork stuff does translate. Like that's a real thing that we've seen from people out of that region in the past. And so I like it. Like he's the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. It's the Pac-12, so it's not as good as like the ACC Player of the Year on defense, but it's still worth something. And he's got like really good north-south speed. So I actually think he'll be a good lob threat right away. He's a little bit of a late bloomer, which I kind of like because he is 22. It's a little old for the draft at this point, but also at Arizona, like I think he flashed stuff. Like I think he's more than just like a square 7-footer. Like they ran a lot of DHO dribble handoff stuff with him. He played in 2 big lineups with another center at Arizona, so he could do it. He played power forward in those lineups and sometimes also center. So I think he could pair with Bam potentially. Like he's got experience doing that. I don't know. I really like him. I think he's got good feel. He flashed some like really good playmaking, like out of the post, like whipping passes to the opposite wing out of that triple threat position. Like there's stuff that's really impressive there that I would bet on. I'm a bigger fan of Koloko and a bigger believer in his ceiling than I think you are. But there is, like to your point, he was raw, mechanical, sometimes was really late. There were times where he just disappeared in games. So the big question is like, all right, it's one of those players, like if you watch him believing that you're going to love him, there's a lot to like. If there's other games, like you can kind of go into it being like, I want to hate this player. You can find reasons to hate him. Like you either believe in the games that he's really good or you can see the games where he disappears a little bit and you could be, really turned off, which I think you're more on that side and I'm more on the potential side.
I don't see much of a real feel from him. And I know a lot of that is the fact that it's a very relatively new game, but we rarely see these kinds of players make that evolution. I mean, the one exception, and I know it's a total aberration, is Hakeem Olajuwon, right? Another late bloomer, a guy who started off playing football or soccer, whatever. And that kind of footwork translated and he became one of the all-time greats. How often is that the case? It rarely happens. And at most, you're probably going to get a decent big. And maybe that's enough. But again, to my point earlier, I'd rather take a swing on a more talented upgrade athletically that can find a clear-cut role in this team because I just don't see it from him. When you've already got Bam starting at center and he's the likely choice moving forward, and you've already got Omer Yurtseven, who, again, to your point, is another big body who can, in theory, block shots, but just doesn't necessarily have the same kind of lateral movement as you'd like from the center position. I just don't know that he's that upgrade. Or maybe, again, you're just a bigger believer in what Koloko could bring.
I think Koloko's more ready to be a shot blocker, rim protector threat right now than Omer Yurtseven is. I like Koloko more right now than Yurtseven right now. But that's the challenge of scouting, right? It's all about taste. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like it's a very subjective thing. We've seen players before that guys are sort of frown on because they don't have the intangibles or something that they're looking for. And maybe I'm just kind of biased against 7-footers in general. I don't think that's the case. I don't see anything pop necessarily. Maybe I haven't watched them as closely. Admittedly, this is an exercise that we're kind of leaning into here, but I did not devote months and months or years of work of studying Christian Koloko's game to determine that he's going to be an NBA player or not. Yeah. I know he was not on my radar until about 48 hours ago. Having said that, I just don't know that he is the solution for Miami at number 27.
Right.
But we'll talk about that later on in the show as well. I'm not sure if he's a solution for Miami, what his fit would be here. But we've also got a great interview from Auburn men's basketball head coach Bruce Pearl in our next segment as he talks about another potential big man prospect, Walker Kessler. So stay tuned for that. But just another reminder that BetOnline is still your number one choice and source for all of your betting stats and sports info. You can find all the latest sports developments, news and odds, including this year's basketball championship matchup, the NHL Hockey Conference Finals, Major League Baseball, the NHL Hockey Stanley Cup Finals. I don't know why this copy has not been updated, but it still doesn't matter because BetOnline is a choice for you. And, of course, you can find all your fighting news from MMA to UFC to boxing. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. Bet online, where the game starts.
But we are talking about Walker Kessler. We're with Bruce Pearl, the head coach over at Auburn. So he plays a little bit at UNC. Then you get him at Auburn. Now that you had him for a year, what kind of stands out to you personality-wise that obviously people just watching him on TV don't know?
He's a fierce competitor. I mean, he hates to lose. He wears it on his sleeve. He loves the game. He loves his teammates. And he's got a chip on his shoulder. Just in case you or anybody out there is doubting who the most dominant player is on the floor, Walker is very willing to try and prove you right if you believe in him, or prove you wrong if you don't.
Well, you mentioned the dominance there. His rim protection numbers are off the charts. Everything that you look at, advanced metrics, just box score blocks, all this stuff. What was it that made him so effective as a rim protector, other than the fact that the guy's huge?
Well, I think, and that's an important piece to the equation, is that he's different, huge. Like, he's 7'1" and a little bit. Like, he's got another level length. Like, think about blocking a shot and think about literally the centimeters between getting it and deflecting it and actually coming close to it.
Right.
And so that huge matters. I mean, that size and that length matters. Now, the other thing that I don't think anybody was really aware of is that, and I would every now and then remind Walker, stop playing like a big 7'1" slow white guy. Stop it, because you're not. And he's athletic. He is explosive. He's fast. And he knows it. But every now and then when you're 7'1", I've never been 7'1". I don't know about you, but I've not been 7'1".
Nope, not close.
So when you're carrying 260 around, I would imagine every now and then you want to play like all the other 7'1", 260 guys, except he's not. And that's why I think all of a sudden you're like, there's no way he's going to get to that one. And he gets to it.
Yeah. That's another thing I wanted to ask you about, because you watch him and you notice he is light on his feet. He slides well. The footwork's there. But, and he would switch a little bit for you guys, right? I was just curious, how comfortable were you having him switch out onto the perimeter? Because he did it a little bit, but I know he dropped a lot too. Like, what kind of rules did you have in place for Walker? Like, on 1-5 pick and rolls, was it just 4s that he would switch on to? Like, what kind of rules did you have?
Yeah, like that's a great question. So here's the deal. We down and ice everything on the side so that we don't let people go middle, which I think most NBA teams play like that. So the way to attack that ice is to attack the big going downhill. Well, that's a mistake, because if you attack Walker going downhill, you're not going to go by him. You're not going to go around him. He's going to meet you at the rim. The best you could hope for is a pull, which he's going to go out there and challenge. And so he got really, really comfortable on side ball screen of being willing to go ahead and ice you and switch you and take that guy all the way to the rim. In the middle, we tended to weak the ball screen, not so much drop it, but weak it with various levels of impact. Every now and then he'd weak it and blitz it a little bit. Every now and then he'd lateral it on a weak and then kind of roll back to his own. And late in the shot clock, we absolutely didn't mind him switching. Right. And the only reason why we didn't switch more is because I always had a really small point guard. We always had a tiny point guard out there. And every now and then I wouldn't want to let the big roll him down for rebounding purposes. Walker, one-on-one with a matchup on the perimeter guard, I got absolutely no problems with it.
Where did you see him most improve? I know it was a small amount of time, but where did you see him most improve?
I think his confidence, as much as anything, is what improved, and the impact that he can have the game in the air. Walker is very critical of himself. He sets the bar really high for himself, which is a wonderful thing, and then he works really hard to achieve that. So, but in the air, Walker was the best player in college basketball last year, and whoever was the second best player in the air wasn't even close to Walker. And what I mean by that is he would put himself in positions way off the ground and not worry about landing. Whereas a lot of guys won't get up off the ground in a block charge situation, in traffic, on a rebound, or jumping up to catch a lob.
Right.
Because who knows what's going to happen when I hit the ground. There's bodies everywhere. Walker gets in the air, and he's able to finish plays in the air regardless of what his landing surface is. You know, it's not the fall that kills you. It's the stop at the bottom. And that's what makes him so really, really different. For as big and long as he is, he gets up in the air, he stays in the air, and he finishes plays in the air.
That's again one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is the lob threat with him. It feels a little like Rudy Gobert-ish with Utah, the way that you guys kind of used him.
Yep.
Is that kind of an accurate comparison? Would you throw another comparison out there?
He would now, but how big is Rudy? How tall is Rudy exactly?
Right. I think he's 7 foot, like with a 7'6" wingspan or something.
Okay, so
like
Walker's not much. I just think maybe the only thing would be different would be Walker's ability to elevate a little bit too.
Yeah.
Like to me, they throw the ball to Rudy, and Rudy can sometimes just get it without even leaving the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Walker will actually be able to, leave the floor. And I think the other thing too, where I project Walker offensively, is he's going to be a dynamic stretch five. I mean, he is going to be able to shoot the ball with great range and he's going to shoot a great percentage. Before you can begin to shoot a great percentage from three, you got to start shooting them in game situations. And so obviously at North Carolina, his first year, he really wasn't encouraged to even attempt that shot. So you play the game without that really being in your arsenal. And so you have to play without it. For me, we began encouraging him to shoot it, and he didn't need encouragement. He wanted to shoot it.
Right.
If he came back to me this year, instead of going in the first round of the NBA draft, he'd have gone from whatever he shot it at, he'd have really increased his percentage just because another season of just some attempts. Because he could, you don't want to play horse with him. He can really shoot the ball.
Yeah, he took 53s for you. He made 10 of them. And I'm curious, like, what did you see? I mean, obviously, he was probably making them in practice. Like, what did you see that made you encourage him?
That's a great question. All I could tell you is almost every time it left his hands, I thought I was going to go in. Like, I wasn't like, oh, no, yes, no. It was like, I was really glad he shot the ball. We did some things to get him those shots. And so therefore, because of what I saw in practice, because of his shot prep, because of his delivery, I just think that's only going to get better.
Talk to me a little bit about his playmaking, because you guys ran quite a bit of the high-low stuff with him, and obviously Jabari, who's maybe going to be the number one pick. What did you see from him, and why did that dynamic work?
Well, he obviously could catch it. He'd face it about at least half the time Walker played for me. He was facing the basket, which was, again, different than what he experienced either in high school or at Carolina. And so he's a very willing passer. He's a very comfortable passer. Obviously, he could see it over the defense. He could pass it with either hand. The one thing that Walker didn't do a lot that he's got is a shot fake rip game. Now, there's some really good shot fake rip highlights. There aren't a lot of them, but there's some really good ones where he actually can get in and he can Euro step to the basket. We do a lot of our drill work at Auburn with everybody, guards and bigs. And my assistant, Ira Bowman, who is one of the best individual workout guys in basketball, we're blessed to have him, does a drill. It's a full court finishing drill. And I'm talking about every which way you're going to try to finish. And typically only your guards can do it. Your bigs can't. Walker could do them all at full speed. And so, same leg, same hand, Euro, play off 2 feet, all of it. He can do all that stuff just like a guard. So he can rip it, he can go by you, and he can finish.
Do you know what teams have had contact with him that are looking at him? Because he's kind of projected anywhere from 20 to the end of the first round. Do you know if the Heat have looked at him?
I think that the teams in the teens to the mid-20s is where we're getting the most dialogue, the most conversation, and so I can't see him going anywhere but in that range.
Right.
And there's a chance that somebody could pluck him higher because he's just so rare and he's so unique.
Since I have you, I have to ask about Jabari. Just tell me, why should he be the number one pick?
Well, because he's guaranteed NBA All-Star. Like, there aren't many of those. What you see, and without going into the competition for being number one, Jabari was the best jump shooting big guard in college basketball in the last, I don't know how many years.
Yeah.
And the comparisons to KD are legitimate. in the sense of his ability to face it and shoot it, contested or not. He's got a back to the basket game. He was a high school center, so he knows how to go down in there and shoot a turnaround jump shot. He's going to jump hook over either shoulder. He's got a pretty good rip game, and he actually rips left right now better than he rips right for whatever reason. And you know he's eventually going to rip right better because of his right hand. They say, can he guard 1 through 5? But he does guard 1 through 5. Legitimately, he sits down. He gets in a stance. He sits his butt down. He challenges. You know, off the ball, he gets lost a little bit, but he's 18. Just turned 19. So learning how to play on the perimeter, obviously, and not just playing inside, which he would have in high school. 1 year of just playing college defense and playing on the perimeter, I think he did amazing. He's in the gym every 6:30, let's say 5 or 6 days a week at 6:30 on a regular tune, but he's been doing it since high school. So he's got the discipline. He's got a consistency to his personality that's every day. He is a great teammate. Like, he was one of the most popular guys on a team. Our guys were not jealous of his success. He made other guys better. He's a tough kid. Like, he's nobody's pussy now. I'm telling you right now, if there's something going on, he's going to jump in at 210, 215, right. Whereas you think, we're going to let this young guy stay off to the side. People thought they could, kind of bully him a little bit and kind of see that you hit him or you talk to him. Really? You want to start this? All right, fine. It's on. Not a frame of the moment. Wants the shot at the end. A better coach probably would have got him more shots and done an even better job with him. But he's there's no downside. There's just no downside. Got an unbelievable frame that's going to be able to carry more weight. He's going to get better, and he got better because I think he came out of high school as a top 7 or 8 prospect. He quickly showed that he was going to be top 3 or 4, and then he closed. And he never got tired, and he showed why he was the best player. I had the best player on the floor every night.
Coach, I know you have a heart out. I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. That was terrific.
Good stuff, man. Let's do it again.
We've got an important favor to ask you. We put together a survey so we can learn more about listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to tell us what you like, what you don't like about Locked On Podcast. So go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It won't take very long, and everybody that completes the survey can qualify for a chance to win a $100 Ticketmaster gift card. Take our audience survey, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey, and thanks again for your help. We're here wrapping up our Blue Notebook segment on Christian Koloko out of Arizona University, or University of Arizona, and Auburn University's Walker Kessler. You just heard from Bruce Pearl, a pretty convincing argument as to why Kessler is a name to consider for Miami at 27. We'll look at our upside scale, when it comes to Koloko there, because as I mentioned in the first segment, not necessarily a believer. I've got him as a 30% fringe player. Like, he is big. That certainly translates. You can't teach height. He does have some athleticism. He has some ability, and there is that potential. We talked about it in the first segment.
Yeah.
The fact that he started playing basketball so late in life. He can grow, but he might not. And that being the case, I see him potentially in and out of the league over the next couple of seasons. We'll see how it all pans out. I'm not wishing him ill or anything like that.
I know, but you have 30% fringe, which is actually interesting because I have him as 35% fringe, and I'm the one that's higher on him. So what do you have him? So what's the rest of your upside scale? Just go through it.
70% chance of being a contributor, and that's it. No chance of being an all-star, no chance of a superstar, obviously. So he can be a big man that can be in and out of your lineup and rotation for the next 5-6 years. And that's a good career. That's a solid career, if at best.
All right, I've got him at 35% fringe, 50% rotation, 15% all-star, 0% star.
All-star? How can he take the all-star leap? I don't see
it. Look at his comps. Look at his comps. It's
Clint
Jarrett Allen, Clint Capella, Robert Williams.
Jarrett Allen.
If you look at the Jarrett Allen scouting reports coming out of was it Texas Tech, one of those coming out of Texas, it's identical to Koloko's scouting report right now. They both finished around 70% at the rim. Actually, Jarrett Allen was 60% at the rim in college. Koloko is 72% finisher at the rim in the half court at Arizona. So right there, they're nearly identical in size, 7 feet with a 7'5" wingspan. That's what Jarrett Allen stands at. All the stuff that Jarrett Allen needed to improve on was the physicality and all of that stuff, and some of the basketball feel, the mechanical part of his game. All of that was there in the scouting report coming out of college. It's identical to Koloko. Now, I'm not saying Koloko's the next Jarrett Allen, but if like his ceiling is probably Jarrett Allen. Like if he hits the ceiling, it looks a lot like Jarrett Allen, and so you've got to give a percentage chance that because Jarrett Allen was an all-star, right? And so there's a percentage chance. And I also like you're lower on Koloko's feel than I am, and I think that's where you and I differ. I just saw enough flashes that I was just really impressed by, like those cross-court passes out of the post, hitting open cutters in that dribble handoff position from the triple threat position, like all that stuff really, really impressed me. And then the defensive stuff, I think he's a plug-and-play rim protector right away. Like I just don't see it not working out. The other version of him is like Nerlens Noel, who's a rotation guy. Like that's a night-to-night kind of like can start for you in a pinch, probably preferably a backup, but a good player to have on your roster.
A contributor.
Yeah, exactly. And then like I've seen the Clint Capella comparison. That's like, Jarrett Allen, like a poor man's Jarrett Allen. I could see the Clint Capella stuff because like Capella, Koloko could kind of go in and out at times. You look at his game
Well,
log. Like
what can make Capella stand out so much in Houston and when he has flashes in Atlanta? Like he's playing with an elite ball handler passer in James Harden and Trae Young.
Yeah.
Like he's not going to have that in Miami. Not a knock on Kyle Lowry or Gabe Vincent.
What, Jimmy Butler?
Is he going to run pick and rolls with Jimmy? You think he's going to be a lob threat from Jimmy? I don't know.
Like they ran some high-low stuff for Koloko, Arizona. Like if you put Bam at the high spot with Koloko like cutting back door from the dunker spot, like Bam can hit him on a lob. I don't know. I think the Heat are creative enough. Like if you're gonna, it kind of goes back to our original question, David, right? Like if you're gonna draft a 7-footer who you want to be in the rotation, you're gonna find ways to use him. Like you can run him with Lowry or even Tyler Herro. We saw Tyler with the Bam pick and roll work so well. Like I could see Tyler, if he doesn't start, maybe coming off the bench with Koloko or a player like that and running pick and roll.
You think he's a better option right now if they draft him at 27 over Omer Yurtseven?
I think his ceiling is much higher. I think like Omer Yurtseven's like all-star potential is 0. Like I think at best he's sort of a low-end rotation guy, Yurtseven. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think Koloko's ceiling is just much higher, and so that's why I have him. You probably have him what, a 2nd-round grade, Koloko?
Yeah, I'd say. I have him 40th or so.
Yeah, and I've got him like 20 to 30 somewhere in there, and that just reflects the upside. Like you say, you don't want to take a guy at the end of the 1st round who doesn't have upside, and I would agree with you, but I think Koloko has upside. So that's where we're different, and this is just how front offices work. So I've got him. If he hits that, it's not a large percentage. I got 15% all-star. That's not a great percentage. That means 15 out of 100 careers. If you replay his career 100 times, 15 of them he'll make an all-star.
That's high. It's 5.
You think it's
5?
Well, you had it 0 before, so it sounds like I'm convincing you.
No. I'm trying to convince you. Yeah, I'm trying to convince you to lower it to 15%. Like there's no chance that 15 out of 100 Christian Kolokos are going to make the All-Star game. That is way too high. Like
let's do Walker Kessler. We've done enough on Koloko.
Right. He's not going to get drafted anyway. Well, he's not going to get drafted by Miami in 20.
Oh, okay. I was like, he just went to undrafted. Like, I feel like you're overcompensating now.
No. Yeah, I'm not trying to tank or
where do you have Walker Kessler? Do you have him on a 1st-round grade?
No, I do not. I'm also not a believer in him. Just again, covers a lot of ground by virtue of being ginormous. I don't know that necessarily translates. The lateral speed isn't there either. Not a lot of creativity offensively. Yes, he's a lob threat. It happens when you're 7'2" or whatever. I just don't see it as something that can translate to the NBA level. So a fringe player, I would say I probably have him close to that same 30%, to be honest with you. I think that's pretty fair of a guy who just might not be able
rotation?
to. I'm sorry?
So 60% rotation players, 0% on all-star and star.
I have it almost identical, 30, 70%. Like he can be a rotation player. I see no all-star potential for Walker Kessler.
I've got him 20% fringe. But like, what would you consider Boban? Like, he's not as big. Nobody's as big as Boban, but like, that's sort of like the worst case scenario for Walker Kessler is like big dude who you trust to just make shots at point blank range at the rim.
Yeah.
And can protect the rim in like a major drop.
Look, everybody loves Boban. Boban,
he's fringe, right?
He chewed the scenery in Adam Sandler's new Hustle movie, which we have to talk about at some point. But I think he's great out there, great personality. Everybody swears by what a fantastic teammate he is. he can't see the floor, and there's a good reason for that.
Right.
Like
So he's a fringe player. So I see like
Yes.
Walker Kessler, like, worst case being like a Boban type guy. He's just big
Boban,
body that you
Alex
throw out
Len.
there when you
Sure.
need something like that.
He's not going to be Jakob who's found a niche, and we didn't get a chance to talk about Kessler. Okay.
So I actually I have him a 70% rotation, 0% all-star, 0% star. So I think Walker Kessler is way safer of a pick than Koloko because there's not that mechanical thing with Walker Kessler. Like, he knows exactly how he wants to protect the rim. Like, if you in the right spot and on the right team in the right system, like, you could just put him back there, play drop coverage, and just let him protect the rim. Like Brook Lopez on defense. Like, that's a useful player. And I think Walker Kessler can walk into the NBA right away with his 7'8" wingspan, whatever it is, and just block shots and protect the basket. Like, people, NBA, college, or otherwise, that is a large human being, and nobody's going to attack him when he's right at the basket. And so that's his role. Now, whether or not that could succeed in Miami, I don't know. It depends on what they do on defense. But I think on the right team, he could really work out. Offensively,
he
is where
he better hope he gets drafted by the San Antonio Spurs so they can find a way to unlock his potential the same way they did Jakob Poeltl. Like, that's the thing. Like, Poeltl was okay in Toronto, and then he winds up becoming a great defensive player in San Antonio.
Poeltl flashed a lot more at Utah than Walker Kessler did, though. Like, there's a reason.
Exactly.
No, I'm not arguing that Walker Kessler should be a lottery pick, but I think at the end of the first round, if you want a guy who could just be like, all right, we could plug him in and he's going to protect the rim for us, and he's going to get a bunch of rebounds for us, and he's already playing really physical and all this stuff, and he's flashed enough from the 3-point range that maybe we could bet on him just being a straight line 3-point shooter. At the end of the first round, it's not a bad pick. If you're not looking for that big swing and you just want somebody that could be a utility piece off your bench, I don't mind it, Walker Kessler. I really don't. So yeah, I don't think he's got much upside, but I think he's pretty much a guaranteed rotation guy, which, again, at the end of the first round, you could do worse.
Yeah. What do you see his fit in Miami? Is he just the guy who comes off the bench, or could you see him starting alongside Bam?
I could see him starting in certain matchups. If you're playing a Boston that plays big, or Philly or Milwaukee.
Philly. Do you think he can handle Joel Embiid defensively?
No, not like nobody can handle Joel Embiid, so that's not really fair. But but if you could put him and Bam out there together, yeah, I kind of like that, And I like the idea of Walker Kessler, a traditional 7-footer. You could play drop with him, let Bam switch stuff and play the perimeter because we know he can guard out there. If you're trying to experiment, I'll put it this way: if you're the Heat and you want to experiment a little bit with Bam at power forward next to a traditional 7-footer, then choosing Walker Kessler at the end of the first round is a good pick. I would say that. I think that's a plug and play option who's going to be way cheaper than any free agent you can find because he's going to be getting $2 million as a rookie, as opposed to maybe having to pay the full mid-level at $10 million for a guy like Mitchell Robinson or something like that. Like, this is like, it's a cheaper way to do that experiment, to perform that experiment and get an upgrade and find something that you don't really otherwise have on the roster.
All right. Well, let us know in your comments whether or not you agree or disagree with our takes on these two players. We'll be looking at some more additional players next week as we continue our Blue Notebook series leading up to Thursday's draft, a special show that we'll be having as the draft takes place. Thanks so much for making us your first listen every day. Now, just a reminder that the first picks of the Ultimate NBA Mock Draft have been made. Search now for Ultimate NBA Mock Draft and get over 50 insiders, the Odyssey sports experts, the draft experts over at Locked On NBA Big Board. It's a 5-episode Ultimate NBA Mock Draft. It's underway. Make Ultimate NBA Mock Draft your second listen today. I'm David Ramil signing off for now. Thanks so much for joining me, Wes.
Wrap it up, B.